Hello and welcome back. I want to talk to you today about the second brain and empathy. Richard Rudd talks about the nerve ganglia in the belly, in the gene keys, where he talks about us having more connections and nerve ganglia in the solar plexus, the entire plexus. So a plexus is the space in which something is encompassed. So our solar plexus, which is interesting, the Egyptians called these our chakras, our central suns. So within the gene keys, he talks about this nerve ganglia, and if you read the book, The Body Keeps the Score, where we are starting to learn that the body stores trauma, emotions, information, and energy within our body. So as we are moving into New Earth and we're finding that emotions are becoming more prevalent in having to take center stage, they're needing to be spoken to, acknowledged, and worked with, we're starting to work with the belly more. So in my clients, I've noticed a theme, and that theme is belly complaints. Personally, I just went through this. I had 2 years of time where I wasn't eating solid food. It wasn't until I had my drum practitioner training and sat in ceremony for 3 days where I was able to recalibrate and heal those cellular instructions and to relieve some of that tension that was going on where the body was incongruent, meaning not congruent, and things weren't working well. I was able to heal that through drum medicine and vibration. However, it's important to note that our emotions are starting to take center stage, and within our body we have systems to calibrate and work with them. I wanted to talk about emotions and the empath today. So it is my belief, the world according to karma, that all of us are an empath. When I was an NLP practitioner training, they talked about body language being 80% of how we communicate, that only 20% is verbal. You know how somebody crosses their arms and looks at you, you can kind of tell they're mad, right? Or they look away. What's true is I feel that a lot of communication actually boils down to energy and emotion. So fear, anxiety, insomnia, those are some of the complaints that I get from my clients where they talk about being unable to regulate. And so I wanted to talk about being an empath. If we are taking in information from others and do not know where we stand, let me see, there was a quote I was working with earlier. Let's see, a ship with no port. For a ship with no port, no weather is favorable. So if we don't know where we're going, then we can't really direct or know how to correct. So if nothing feels right, how are we going to correct that? So within our system, we have a disproportionate relationship with fear. We have fear toward relationships, toward money, all kinds of things. Let's just not attach to it, okay? So our body, like, listen, most of us don't live in true fear. We don't worry about the saber-toothed tiger coming in and chewing us up and we're not going to survive the day. We don't have a true, honest relationship with fear. Most of it's in our brain. Our brain is telling us to be afraid of relationships, afraid of money, afraid of the future, etc. So what happens is when we have trauma, there is a gate or a fuse that's blown. In our electrical box, we can switch the fuse, but with us, we get so amped and cranked up on emotion that we start to spin in that one place and it becomes a new pathway. So in order to interrupt that pathway, we need to take action and interrupt that karma wheel, interrupt that pathway. So one of the things that I like to teach is stop thinking and go to heart. If that's too much and our emotions are too big, we can short circuit the system and go directly to the nervous system. What this means is work with the body. We're constantly working on thinking things through, thinking about our emotions, but we ignore the vehicle that it all comes in. So when our body is aligned, when our body is calm, well rested, well fed, and we can articulate our emotions, we're much better able to think through our problems. We don't take a break often enough, and withdraw when we're amped, and we just continue to get more and more amped. So one of the suggestions is work with the body. How often are you doing self-soothing mechanisms? How often are you paying attention to what your body's needs are? Sometimes we're eating a cheeseburger in the car, like Carl's Jr. commercial, right? And we're really just not slowing down to pay attention to what's going on with our body. So, long baths, long showers, extra lotion, extra naps. Feed yourself healthy foods. If you know that caffeine isn't going to serve you well because you'll be more cranky later, think those things through. Instead of react versus respond, we're going to take leadership and find out what we need ahead of time so that we're ahead of the pace, right? We don't want to ever be behind the ball here. We want to be able to direct these things. So what do we do when we have anxiety? We need to bring it back to the body. What is it that the body is needing? And recognizing that most of it is an emotional response. So the trick here is to feed yourself everything that's needed and to calm your nervous system long enough for you to find out what's really going on with you emotionally and physically. 90% of the time, when we have addressed the nervousness in the body, we're able to stop and take a look at what's not in congruency. So here's what's true. Most of the time, our anxiety is an amplification of something that's coming in from others. I'm going to give you an example. Grief, sadness. Someone's telling you a story where they're sad and you cry with them. That is because you have a resonance within you. I have a resonance within me that allows me to feel that empathy with another. However, it cannot be triggered within us unless there is a resonance to begin with. So checking in with that amplification. Anger is a really good example. When people are angry and it amplifies and it just gets louder and louder and louder until someone apologizes, until someone takes accountability, until someone is responsible. So when we have anxiety, it's similar, but what's true is sometimes that anxiety isn't even ours. Yes, empathy allows for us to feel it, but that doesn't mean we have to own it. I had an example recently. I was talking with someone and I went to hand them something and my hand was shaking. And I was like, whoa, I'm not nervous. And then I realized that the person I was talking to was worried about the consequence of the conversation. And I was like, oh, I'm picking up their energy of nervousness. So constantly checking in with yourself on where you stand and putting the other energy back out where it is, or even meeting it with its answer. So what is the answer? We were just talking about this. I know it may not have been a great video, but it is what it is. We're not deleting it. But when we were talking about amplification of that energy, I lost my train of thought. Anyways, so when we are talking about that amplification of energy, we need to discover what our normal state is. And so if we're not coming back to that often enough, we're constantly in a reactive state. So at what point are we going to stop the reaction and discover what really is and take direction? So number one, treat the body. Feed it whatever it needs. Sometimes it's silence. Sometimes it's food. Sometimes it's naps. Secondly, ask yourself, are you meditating? Are you meditating enough to find where your center actually is and discover what the inner landscape is so you know where you're at? Recently, I was angry. It takes a lot for me to get there. And I recognized that I was edgy. And when someone asked something of me that I really wanted to do, I had to say no. I was like, this might get crunchy tomorrow if I choose to do this. And even though I wanted to help, I knew my own limitations. So are you meditating? Get in there and sit with what's going on with you so you really understand what your landscape looks like. And secondly, hack the body. We don't self-soothe enough. We keep going and expecting too much. And we even add caffeine to the mix so that we keep going past our limits. So keep in mind, empathy really has to do with the ability to feel. So when we have a depth of emotion, that's our gift to others, that we're able to feel this depth of emotion. It's not that we're out of control. It's just that we're not regulated. So we can feel these we can feel with amplitude without it overtaking our body. So embodiment right? Like embodying the emotion, it becomes us. So take a step back, calibrate, direct it, and feed it. Feed it what you really need and trust yourself. I want to thank you for hanging out with me and listening to my little empath TED Talk. I'll catch you on the flip side. Adonai.